Love you, Linda. Love you.
The courthouse the other day in the hallway, you're singing "Oh Happy Day."
One word prayer. Justice, where are you?
Welcome back to Justice Served TV. I'm Michael Bryant. Linda Kenney Baden there is fresh off assignment for Fox Digital after the Kohlberger sentencing and victim impact statements today, which was draining, admittedly. Luckily, we had a little bit of a break to get juiced up for tonight's special guest, former special agent Michael Easter. He'll be with us in just a moment. How you doing there? You got enough merch on, or what?
I have all of our merch. I have here's the little tee, you know, the crop top, and it matches the Justice Served TV. You know, so I have more coming in case you didn't know that. And I also, of course, have our notebook that I took all my notes in today. You know, Justice Served TV notebook. So. I'm full of merch, you know, and you know what you can buy merch too. I actually have
I have a couple of things. I don't have a closet full, you know.
I probably should do one day just one of these tape things, because I have all the things laid out in a folder of all the things I've bought, and to go through everything that I bought. The other day I had the camo sweatshirt on. That was a big hit. But I will tell you, the sweatshirts, these are sweatshirts. These are the hoodies. They run a little bit big. If you like hoodies big because you want to wear sweaters under them, you get them. But I kind of like my hoodies a little tighter. So my second hoodie, I ordered a size
downsized.
I downsized
a little bit.
The yoga pants, true to size, blah, 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 all that. But I'm just kind of like, I'm still, you know, I can't, those poor families today. And I started this morning, by the way, on something that we're going to have a little rip and read on. And then these poor families with Kohlberger, and I just finished an article that I sent over that they're going to hopefully quote tomorrow over to Fox News Digital about things I saw, that body language and his reactions to things, and something that his attorneys, if I were me, I would not have. Doug Weinstein, by the way, is answering me because I said
I think he misunderstood what you were saying.
Well, he did. He thought that I would, as an attorney. Dougie, maybe we should just tell Doug to come on. You know?
Okay, so maybe I can clarify. What you said was that you can't believe they made a deal that didn't require him to effectively allocute. But I think you were suggesting it in the context of that, just them getting the information, which they could then release at a certain point. Is that my interpretation right? Because I think Doug was interpreting as an allocution, which is a far different story.
Right, that I would let my client allocate. Yes. But I was saying that the prosecutors...
Just the info.
Look, here, you want the deal to death penalty table, you give us these things as almost like a proffer. Let's proffer them.
Yes, and so at this point today, after the gag was lifted, the prosecution would then be able to share that information.
Right.
But we have learned, he basically said, I don't care, or I don't want to know, or it wasn't a bargaining chip.
It wasn't a bargaining chip.
And you could tell when he first started his comments, he addressed the why and the how, and you don't want to know that. You don't want to hear from him. Anything you hear from him, it's going to be just a lie. That may be 100% true, but now we know, since he really didn't ask about it or make it part of the deal, that he had nothing to share anyway. So he was saying that to make himself look better. Like, I didn't get anything, but you don't want to hear what he has to say.
You don't have to say. And then the press conference afterwards. Well, we can't tell you that. We never learned that. We never learned what he did with the sheath. We never learned why he targeted
the knife.
We couldn't the knife. The knife. We couldn't find out where Brian Kohlberger where he intersected with them, why he chose them, why he chose that house, why he chose them, why he chose that night. I mean, you know, this is the things that inquiring minds who follow crime would like to know, especially because you don't want somebody else to do it to happen again. So if I were the prosecutor, the DA, I'd say, okay, give me a proffer. You give me a good proffer, I'll take the death penalty off the table. You show me, we'll go get the knife, okay? If you don't have it, tell me what you did with it, right? Sure. And it's like any proffer we're talking about. We're talking about a proffer with one of your rip and reads stories that we're going to have.
So we're suggesting that William Thompson, who was the Latah County prosecutor and brought down to Boise, Ada County, when the case was transferred, kind of wimpy about the whole thing. So he definitely could have done more than he did. But we're not the families. We're not the ones most affected by it. But
Right. I know.
we kind of like to know. Okay, before we get to our special guest. All right, this just handed me. This is from, let's see, which case was it? There's so many of these. In the Epstein case, Florida court has just decided that rejection, there will be no releasing of any of the transcripts from the grand jury in the Florida case, okay?
We forgot the case.
Of the Epstein. I said Epstein.
Okay.
I'm just throwing one name out there anymore, and people kind of figure it's the one Epstein we've been talking about. So yeah, the Jeffrey Epstein case that just came down. Don't get that confused with this other piece of paper. This is an order from the New York court. Okay, this is the United States District Court, Southern District, and this was a request by the U.S. for a motion. It was a motion to unseal grand jury transcripts. This is still alive. The court has issued this order, and they want more information. They want a memorandum of law from the government. It seems to me it was put together pretty slapdashery, and it's got a lot of holes in it. So the court is not even willing to rule on whether or not to release these grand jury transcripts till they get the government to file a memorandum of law no later than next Tuesday. No more than 25 pages, double spaced, damn it. Don't even think about making it longer than that. They need to know what materials there are, specifically what the materials are. They want an index. This is, of course, relating to Ghislaine Maxwell's case. They want an index of her grand jury transcript materials, a brief summary of the pages they want to look at, a complete set of her transcripts, a complete proposed redacted set of her transcripts, a description of any other jury materials, grand jury materials, including but not limited to exhibits, and they want a letter from Ghislaine Maxwell giving her position on the release of this information. So we have one grand jury in Florida on the Jeffrey Epstein case saying, no, you're not getting the grand jury stuff. It's looked at as sacrosanct, and the burden is very high to get that stuff to be released. Then we have the New York case, which is more directly related to the Ghislaine Maxwell matter, which we know she's been asked to come and talk to the DOJ, and she depending on what she says, it may impact whether the grand jury materials are released. But that's the latest.
Well, I spoke a little bit about this morning when I did the Court TV interview, which, by the way, I have posted as to what they're looking for. And look, they can't have her out in the House Intelligence Committee while she has she's got an appeal going on right now, so they can subpoena her.
What is she going to say?
She ain't coming without a bargain and deal. And so, what could they be looking for? Well, between the lines, we know what some people in politics may say the government wants, and I talked about what other things the government may want. But I tell you what, who's really into this case is Doug Weinstein. I've also like to get Mark Epstein back with maybe Doug. I think let's have a production meeting right now. How about next Thursday night? Because by then we may have some kind of answer from the New York court, because they tend to work very quickly.
Yep. Okay. Well, pencil that in, and we'll see if we can shuffle all the pieces together in a timely manner. So that's all the rip and read we got. We're done ripping and reading. So I think it's time to bring on the professor. Is it Egg Daddy? Is that I can't keep up with all these
these daddy,
nicknames.
Daddy.
Michael Easter, former FBI.
Are you playing his little? Are you playing Miss Mike Easter's little Mike Easter's?
Oh,
did you not play that in?
I do not have that handy. No, I do not have that handy. So I guess your family. We haven't talked to you since that was put together. Your family enjoyed the little baby Easter?
Yeah, no, my daughters hated it.
Why would they hate it?
I think because we've probably seen too many baby things, and I think they're hilarious, and so I constantly see them on my feed, and I think my daughters are done seeing them. They don't understand why it's so funny.
Even though it was Dad. Come on, it's Dad.
No, they liked it. I'm just joking with you guys. I thought it was great.
Yeah, it means you made the big time. I mean, I think we were the last ones being done too. I think we were the last ones. Like we just barely got under the wire with the big time.
That's right.
Yeah.
Thanks to Allegedly for throwing that together for us.
That's great.
So how you been? I know you've been in and out of trials. I appreciate you spending a little time with us in between. What's been happening?
Yeah, I've been in trials. I've done 3 different trials. I spent a week up in San Francisco for a trial, and then I've had actually 3 more. No, yeah, 2 or 3 more. They all start to blend together. I think you guys know. Just expert testimony as it relates to the cell phone records and the whatnot. So.
And so I know you have different roles in some of these different trials. Sometimes you're, of course, a witness when the judge will let you. And then sometimes you're like helping pick a jury because of very special elements of a given case. More often than not, what? Testifying as an expert?
Yes. I did 3 homicide trials where I was testifying to Google location history and cell phone records and device type information. And then the other one, I actually sat as a defense investigator. Believe it or not, this judge decided that that's permissible. Unlike Judge Kenney. But
doesn't happen, I guess, all the time.
Yeah, that was really, I found it really interesting because, I've only ever seen cases or been an investigator from the government side. And so it's interesting sitting on the other side and listening to every witness accuse you of doing something. I'm sitting there with the defendant, and listening to how they react to it afterwards as we chat in the evenings and just understand his perspective on what was being said about him, or his criminal activity. And then understanding how do we convey, because he wasn't going to take the stand, how do we get back in cross-examination or even in our own case in chief, his I don't want to say his story, but you get my point is when he's accused him, he's like, well, that's not what happened. This is what happened. And it's like, well, if we don't have a witness to bring that forward, how do we get that out of the witness that the government's brought? And I think you guys probably would appreciate this. And that I'm not an attorney, but the concept, it's really a battle of wits and almost a game of the mind of how do we get something to come out in court without bringing a witness. And so I don't want to say I enjoyed that because ultimately the defendant's the one that pays a price at the end, but I found it interesting and challenging to sit that side of the table for sure.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that there's that some of it's game playing, some of it's strategy, some of it's who knows the rules of evidence better than others. Because if you know the rules of evidence, there are many ways to get stuff in that may appear on face value to be inadmissible. So interesting to get your perspective of the process from there. Hey, we talked about this earlier. We threw your name out there. Your ears might have been burning, but in one of our prior conversations, I think you mentioned you had some connection with the Kohlberger investigation, or you were consulted on it. So we don't know what, if anything, you can talk about. Obviously, now he's sentenced. The conviction is in. But this question goes directly to that. So whether you can answer or not, don't know. Common sense investigator, could you please ask Mr. Easter if you ever went to 1122 King Road for the BK investigation? I found pictures, and it looks like you going in the house. So what about that? Isn't it true? You were at the house. What about this picture, sir? Yeah.
I will tell you, it's another very good-looking man that looks just like me. No, actually, the person that you're seeing is not sure I'll say his name. I know him; he's a friend of mine. He's somebody that I taught, and he was the person that I was assisting. We almost are. In fact, when he was sort of being recruited, I guess, so to speak, to come to our team. One of the guys that knew him was recruited him. He's like, "Hey, bro, he's you, but just younger." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "He looks like you. He's tall. He's in shape. He's got the same look. He even has the same mannerisms as you." And I was like, "Okay, well, I got to see this guy." And literally, we walked in. It was like we almost looked like brothers, like just a younger brother.
Your doppelganger. Wow.
Yeah.
Now you know how people get wrongfully convicted by wrongful identification, right?
I mean, he even dresses like me. We both tend to wear jeans and black shirts at training.
There might be a DNA test necessary here.
Oh, this one. Tell him the guy never went into the garage.
Yeah.
Yeah, he and whose name is out there, so I'll say it, but Nick Balance, he was the other FBI agent there. I won't say the other FBI agent because I know his name hasn't been made public, so I won't do that to him. But I was supporting those two people remotely. And so maybe if there's interest to, I'll just give you a couple sentences, and if there's more questions to it, is our team would deploy typically assets to be actually on the ground, and they would typically deploy a national asset. which this unnamed party is, and then a field asset, which is Nick Balance. And then we would have people in the background supporting those two assets on the ground, so that as they are dealing with real-time things, they don't have to then go sit down at a computer and go through the data and analyze it and come up with what I would say demonstratives, but a timeline or hey, these are some things that we got from that evidence that you should be acting on. And so we really act as a support element, like an intelligence support element to the field asset or the national asset that's deployed. So in that instance, I was assisting remotely, but I've been on the other side of that where I'm actually the one on the ground, and those two individuals would be supporting remotely. And it really became a great asset for us because, as you guys could imagine, when you're sitting there in the moment, it's hard to take a break and really go through the evidence that you've collected and make it make sense across the time or the event. And it really helps somebody that's not really encumbered with the exigency of the moment to sort of have a clear mind and just look at it and give some perspective. And we would normally say, hey, you guys should take a closer look at this number or this device. And then they move forward there. So
yeah. Give us a sense of the time frame, because obviously it was a crazy time. People wanted answers as quickly as they could get them, and there was a period of a few weeks that people were very concerned. You're in the midst of that. How was that unfolding internally?
Well, remotely, you don't feel that stress. Maybe I'll give you the examples of the times that I've been there. It is bring a sleeping bag and a pillow and put it under the desk that you're working at. And I mean, it's, sleep in the back of your car. You're just not going home. I remember some distinctly. I remember one on the East Coast when I was pretty new as a national asset. It was a 14-year-old girl that was abducted. I mean, it was a real stranger abduction. I analyzed her phones, and I saw that she took a different path home that day, which was odd to me because I could track her movements away from the school. And kids said that she normally didn't go that way. And I saw her phone hitting these towers that made it look like she was doing laps around a building. And when we went there, we could see that she was pacing around the building through surveillance video. And then she got in a car and left. And so then it becomes, she was waiting, right? It's clear that she was waiting for somebody. And that, I don't care if you have kids or not. We did not sleep. I mean, we sat there all day, every day until, the end of that case. And it was great is that community actually brought food to the command post and water and drinks because they knew that we were sitting there 24/7. So yeah. I would say if you haven't been at a critical incident before, it is a lot. It can be a high emotion for some people if you don't have a lot of experience. And so you really got to control your emotions and stick to the task. And that, I think it really comes to just having good teamwork and a good process and sticking to that and not following bright, shiny lights, but really focusing on your process.
Yeah. One more follow-up, Linda, if I might. So how was the cooperation? This was a multi-agency effort from small town, Moscow, Idaho, not exactly, the sophisticated nerve center of law enforcement. How did that all go?
Yeah, I don't, because I wasn't there, it's hard to get a feel for that. What I could say, though, from my experience dealing with the assets that I was supporting is that the FBI's presence was helpful. And so what I mean by that is typically we would sort of stay in our lane if it's not a violation that we have jurisdiction over. And instead we're bringing what I would say investigative support. And I know that the two assets that were there went a little beyond what I would say is investigative support and really invested a lot more investigative time than just support. And so not that there's anything wrong with that, bad or good, but just that to me usually shows a healthy relationship between the locals and the FBI, and that we have a relationship and trust that we're not here to take your case. We're not here to take the spotlight, but instead be good investigative partners with state and local. And you in contrast, you never saw that, probably for obvious reasons, with the Massachusetts State Police there in Norfolk. They had no relationship clearly with the FBI. If the relationship was there, it does appear to be bad. And I can say that's not the case. I worked I've worked several cases pretty similar to the one we're probably going to discuss, and oftentimes I find that on a maybe on an organizational level, there's always this aspect that there's a conflict between local and FBI. Oh, the FBI's here, great, a bunch of whatever. On a personal level, I don't find that true. Like once you have a good relationship between as me as an FBI agent when I was one with, like, for example, LAPD, who I did a lot, they call you or you call them. Hey, I heard it happened. They're like, yeah, can you please come down? We're going to start doing what we do. And so I think that's how it was up there, at least from my feeling. And the two agents that I was assisting are really just, I couldn't say enough great things about them. I would say, I put it in this perspective: if I had somebody that was missing or a victim of a crime and those two showed up, I'd be stoked.
No, that's good to hear. Good to hear.
Wow, that really is interesting. But it's interesting that people said Nick testified in the Lori Vallow Dable trial. So see, the crime people, all the crime people follow these trials. They know who testified in every single one. You say a name and they know it.
Yeah, Nick's. Yeah, I did speak to Nick recently, and we chatted a little bit about some things. And yeah, Nick's a good agent.
Great. That's great.
So we are here to talk about Brian Walshe. We talked about that before we had you come on to get your thoughts just in general. Did you work on this case at all, or have you worked on this case at all?
No.
Okay.
It's very interesting though.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So for those who obviously, Linda, why don't you do some of the details? I'm going to pull up some pictures here just so that we can kind of set the stage for this.
We know that Anna Walshe had a dinner party for New Year's Eve, and we have a great timeline with regard to that. She disappeared. The New Year's Eve dinner party was 2022, obviously. She disappeared New Year's Day, 2023. Her husband, Brian, had already pleaded guilty to an art scam involving the sale of paintings on eBay. I'm not sure they were paintings or silk screens for Andy Warhol, but they were false. He had an ankle bracelet on. He was awaiting sentencing. Anna Walshe then disappears. Supposedly, he's reported missing on January 4, 2023, but I don't think by Brian. I think, if I recall, it was by her work history. Her work people said she hadn't shown up for work. In any event, he comes to an agreement supposedly with the law enforcement agencies saying that, well, you can have my phone, and there's also a son's phone, and I'm not sure it was
an
he had
iPad.
Agreed,
Yeah,
an iPad or whatever. And there was a lawyer involved and said you can look at it for text messages between the two of them. When Agent Proctor got the phone, there's also another agent that's involved here. They seem, I wonder who that could be. Apparently the phone was downloaded with a dump, but not just to look for messages, but to look for all data that was in the phone, including geolocations and all. Of the son's phone, of his phone. And here we are with a motion now to dismiss, press, because the consent agreement was just for the text messages between Anna and her husband Brian, and not for any other data. So Michael and I have been batting this around because we think that you would have the answer that could you get to the same, let's assume this gets suppressed. Could you get to the same information by going to towers and looking for where his cell phone was, where the wife's cell phone is? And in terms of law enforcement, the kid's cell phone, is it owned by the kid who's under 18, or is it owned by the person who's the account holder? And you could shed some light on all of this. And that's a lot there I just talked to you about, Michael. But do you think we're trying to get to the point that we think that this could be a notable discovery that this information is found out other ways besides the improper and possibly and likely illegal way that this information was?
Yeah, and let me just add one. We haven't gotten a decision yet. And my belief is the court is trying to find a way through inevitable discovery or some other to not suppress the material. So let's get your take on that, and then just go through the mechanics of, okay, I've got a graphic here about all the geolocation info that they theoretically did not have the right to look for. First question: how common, in your experience, is it to have consent for one of these devices rather than a formal search warrant.
And in this type of situation, it's more common.
Really?
Yeah, I would suspect that they did why I would do it, which is it's a test. It's a test for the person you're interviewing. That's I've worked several of these, and if you haven't worked these, well, those guys have worked enough to know that my first instinct is that the husband is going to have some role in an adult female wife missing, unless she's a true gone girl, which I've worked the Sherry Papini case out of Mount Shasta. I worked that when she was a gone girl. But to kind of bring back to this is that I would use it as a test of him to consent to me looking at your phone to determine whether he is on board with us finding her. And if he's not going to consent to it, it would make me a little suspicious. Because I think if you were to just ask yourself if your loved one went missing, would you have any reservations of giving up any information on your phone to find your loved one? And if one of my daughters went missing, you could come search every nook and cranny of my house.
Of course.
Because I wouldn't be there. I'd be out running the streets finding her myself. Right. But yeah, I wouldn't. Yes, here, look at it now. Get the person here. Let's start downloading these things immediately. I want this. Whatever you need, it's yours, right?
Okay, so follow up to that is the
test.
How far does that consent go? In your scenario, it's like, here's the phone. Whatever you can find, use it. Not the scenario they had. According to the defense, it was very limited. And therefore, anything beyond it, which gets us to this location information we'll look at in a moment, is a violation of the defendant's rights and fruit of the poisonous tree, Fourth Amendment search and seizure violations, et cetera.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let me answer that part because I was just going on my own tangent. But
by the way, your own tangent, Joanne Jetopoulos was a member for 4 months. She's been following us for a while. You're her all-time favorite guest. So when you go on that tangent, remember you got big shoes to fill there because all-time favorite.
Yeah, that's impressive.
Please tell me you've had more than me as a guest. Then.
Yeah, you and one other person. That's all. That's all we've had. So.
Me and Baby Me is the only guest you've probably had then, right? No, you bring up a good question. Is that when I listened to some testimony specifically, and I heard on YouTube of that hearing, the evidentiary hearing, and I heard the defense or the prosecution read in some of the testimony or the statements, the interview of Mr. Walshe and the questions. And hopefully this doesn't anger too many of your viewers, but I found it a little unclear on whether or not Brian Walshe did consent to a full extraction with the knowledge that they would use all of the extraction for their personal and for the investigation. It seemed to me that could have been clearer. And the way that's done clearer is when I've done it is we would clearly what they did is it's through an interview, it's recorded. And then I would draft up, or we actually have a form in the Bureau, as you can imagine, is a consent form, a consent to search. And in the consent to search, it is not only witnessed by another party, which would sign with me that we both observe this person consent, but you're going to have a very specific description of the item or place to be searched. We'd have a very specific description of the device. And that would either be a visual description or a photograph, or the internal serial number or the phone numbers. It would include what evidence we seek to search or collect from the device. So we would enumerate very clearly that we're going to extract these things for this date range. It would include a receipt for property so that we would give them the pink slip of it's a triplicate copy. We give it back to them so they know that we've taken it. We would document what the product or the item looks like so that when we give it back to them, they don't go, well, you broke my screen. You owe me a new iPhone, right? Which you guys could imagine certain instances that could happen. And, or, hey, I gave you an iPhone 14 and you gave me an iPhone 10 back. And it's like, well, no, I didn't. It's like, well, prove I didn't give you. You know what I mean? So it starts getting to that. So I would say what I didn't see in this case, what I would have liked to have seen is, I think Lieutenant Fanny's the one that first collected them, is I would have collected them through a property receipt that could serve as a chain of custody for it. And then a consent to search that would have been signed by me, a second party, and the person I'm taking it from, so that they could see very clearly, these are the things, just like, you guys are lawyers, just like you would put in items to be seized in addendum A of a search warrant, right? You would have that in a search warrant. So you are simply, this is a search. You're just asking for them to consent. So you shouldn't describe the items to be seized and the items to be searched. And I think, could you imagine if that was done? I think we would see a very different evidentiary hearing because they would have had it written down. Well, you did consent to all of these things and you signed it.
And that was the problem. I mean, now they're talking about what was said and whether a follow-up email reinforced what was said. It's a joke, but I think what you've just described is the vast difference between the FBI and their process and the Massachusetts State Police and their process. Very different.
But I agree. And I think what you're seeing still is a culture that was at the Massachusetts State Police for that Norfolk area, in that this happens in January of 2023. They don't have their investigative practice exposed to the world until April of 2024. Right. So they're still within that operating system that this is how we do it. And I can't imagine that's still happening today, or I hope it's not. But they're going to live with the mess they created with these types of this type of policy or process. And especially the same investigators. We saw the same band of characters that we saw in Karen Reed's case.
It's frightening. Yeah.
That's what's frightening about it. And what about when you have a child? Now, again, I don't know the answer to this. I mean, as a lawyer, this is the one things I'd want to know. Obviously, the child can't. This has to be on an account. But what if this phone or the iPad is on the mother's account? She's paying for it. I would assume then, if that were the case, then the estate for the mother could say, hey, that's fine. There's no problem with it. That there may be a difference now, as opposed to if it's against the dad, who's wants all this suppressed because he said he didn't consent to any of these searches that found all of this stuff, which is not really good for him.
Yeah. Oh no. When I look at these as more of like a family account, for example, I am the account holder and billing party for my family account. And so through legal demand, and even if I were to use a consent form to give to the provider, for example, I only need to get the billing party or the account holder's approval, not every individual person. I could see in court a defense making the argument, though, that although the dad pays for the account, he does not ever use the phone. But that doesn't mean that I still don't have dominion and control over the account, because I do. So because I could not pay the account, I could close the account. I have that authority. I would say it's, when you think of this case, I would even say the children's phone and iPad, those are family use. They're not sole use, because it would appear through other investigative techniques or interviews and such that it was obvious that the parents were also interacting with those devices.
Let me chip in with some of the laws I understand it. Obviously, the question is, does a minor have Fourth Amendment rights to search and seizure protection? And the law basically says, yes, kind of, sort of. It defers to the parents in certain situations. If you talk about something that happened in somebody's home, which is where this happened, as I recall, right? Was it in the home? Wasn't out and about somewhere?
Well, the phone was out and about, and it went to the ice cream station, and it kind of.
Where was the iPad when the police looked at it?
I don't know, because the kid had a phone too, so I don't know about where the iPad was. I don't know the answer.
I'm just going to assume it was at home, just because it makes more sense, but maybe that's wrong. But in the home, they would have the parental control would almost supersede the child's. home, child's protection under Fourth Amendment rights. So the courts have looked at it as kind of a qualified Fourth Amendment right for the minor, depending on the circumstances. So, in this case, how that plays out, the judge is probably wrestling with that because it's a sub issue. First, you have to get past that before you can get to whether or not there's truly fruit of the poisonous tree. Who had the right, who enforced it or didn't enforce it. So it's a very interesting legal issue.
So Michael, let me ask you this about how the process works. So you have all these cell towers, right? Can you even forget that if they didn't have the proper consent of the warrant, the cell towers in the building exist independently to the carriers, right? So if I have a AT&T phone, I'm going past a Verizon tower, Verizon's going to bill AT&T, and that number is going to show up. Can you go through all the dumps of all the phones that hit these towers and see if there's a pattern of a certain number that be unrelated to like taking the phone itself and doing a dump on the phone?
Yes. And I like what you're thinking. I didn't necessarily see that yet in this case. And I'm not sure if that's just because it's not contested or if they didn't do it. I would say looking at the Karen Reed case as a barometer, they tend to rely heavily on the device content, the information stored locally on the device, and not as engaged in getting what I would say is carrier or network-based information. And I think that's what you're getting at, Linda.
Right. Yes.
Is that law enforcement has the ability. In fact, they go together, and they're not going to have the same identical information because what's stored on the device is stored on the device, but can be manipulated, deleted, and clearly the device can be destroyed. But that device's interaction with its cellular network, or even other location-based things like Wi-Fi or GPS, that can be preserved at a network or a phone company level, for example, and it's maintained as a business record. And the user can't affect that in real time, right? Because it's a business record that happened in real time. They can't go back and undo it. And so I'm a little surprised. I don't want to say I'm surprised because we saw it already once. I think it's the best practice that, yes, you want to get the device, but you also want to preserve or obtain all the information that's related to the device's interaction with the cellular network or other location-based network as a business record. And the reason you want to do that is you can fill in gaps. You can collect new information that's not preserved on the device. And ultimately what you see in this case is that, heaven forbid, one piece of evidence gets excluded. You don't have sole source location information. Instead, you can go and look at the providers. And the question that's popping up is how long are records kept?
I know we've talked about this before, and it's a great question. Yeah.
So let's look at that. Verizon would be a rolling calendar year for calls, incoming and outgoing calls that would show cell site information. They have what is considered timing advance, or what they refer to as RTT, which is real-time tool for them. That can be anywhere from like 3 to 5, maybe 7 days, depending on the market. And for those that aren't sure what that is, it's not necessarily tied to a call or text message or data session, but synchronization, signaling from the network to the phone to keep it in sync. And that can be very powerful because not only do you see the tower, but you see the side of the tower and an access distance. And you would have seen that, I think, in the Kohberger case. We saw that.
I was going to ask you about that because they talk about the towers in the Kohberger case, right? They talk about the phone hitting the towers.
And you saw it in Karen Reed's case, actually. You didn't see it in the second trial, but it was misused by Trooper Tolley. He actually misstated the use of his testimony was horrible. He shouldn't be considered an expert, in my opinion.
But if you look at, let me ask you this. I'm sorry to interrupt, but in Moscow, very kind of remote, fewer towers, less accurate, less precise, less helpful, or what? No?
Well, yeah, there's two parts to that, Michael, which is that one, tower density or spacing does increase in more rural areas where there's less need for multiple levels of coverage because of user density, for example. the challenge would be is that the range of the tower increases, and it can increase to several miles because it has less people to provide coverage to.
Yeah.
However, the timing advance information in rural areas becomes even more powerful because I taught a course to the arson investigators just recently here in California, and I used the term big desert, small search area, or big mountain, small search area. And the reason I use that is in rural areas, the towers can have a large coverage area, but when you look at the timing advance information, it will tend to take that down to a very small area because we get signaling from multiple sources that kind of do an X marks the spot for us. And I maybe dozens or more people I found, or at least I should say, body dumps in the desert, and I'm able to recover them because of stuff like that. Missing hikers, I found missing hikers in all sorts of this parts of this world because of that. But maybe just finish up on the timing advance or the records collection. T-Mobile, 2 years for calls and text. And then right now, I think they've shortened it to 60 days, might even be 30 days now for timing advance. And then AT&T is 5 years. And
Wow.
you get 5 years for voice, text, SMS, data sessions. And I don't think their timing advance is going back 5 years because they didn't recently, they didn't have that until recent. But nonetheless, if they're, they started this case in January of 2023, right when she went missing. I would have hoped that they would have been preserved all the account records for that device, because I agree with Michael. I think the judge is trying to find any legal thread to keep that evidence in, but heaven forbid it doesn't. That they've really put themselves in a challenging position if they didn't collect other location information. And then maybe just a slight tangent for you, that he should have had an ankle monitor if he's on federal probation or federal.
He does, and this is another thing I wanted to ask you about. Right?
So I've done, believe it or not, I've worked several homicides where the defendant had an ankle monitor.
Wow.
Never learned.
Right. And I've analyzed those ankle monitors for location information to connect them to the crimes. And so I would think they should be able to get that from the federal probation as to his ankle monitor activity, but it is maybe a backstopping for stuff. I think the biggest thing you lose is clearly, if that stuff is suppressed, is not location, but the search history.
The search history. Let's go back to the ankle monitor a second, because one of the things that I wanted to ask you, that was the first thing, was you can get, because I've had clients on ankle monitor, it's a pending trial, and they know where you are and all. But with the ankle monitor, from your experience of people being on federal probation, waiting for the sentence, he's waiting for the sentence, and he had to have permission to leave his house. He didn't get permission. No. Is there anything or any agreements or anything you've ever seen in the histories of documents that says, wait a second, you're giving up all your rights to where your phones are or anything like that because you have to get permission to leave your house? As part of this monitoring? Anything you've ever seen like that?
I haven't. And I saw somebody said that his didn't have GPS. I haven't seen what he has, but typically I've seen, if it's not a GPS, in fact, it's pretty uncommon now for them to be true GPS. Instead, they're just sending messaging over SMS. So it's cell towers. Or I've seen a second option, which is it's tethered to a spot in the house, a device in the house that if you get X distance from it sends an alarm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also, and all very good to help,
right?
But
I would think the device that has that's tethered to a home like hotspot type of concept would still have a feature for SMS, because now I'd want to use it to locate the person. I would love to see the records from that. I hope the government provides those to law enforcement. And if anybody watching this at the trial needs help, I will look at those records for you.
There you go.
But
there you go.
I'll stop there. Maybe you guys had another question about that I could help answer.
I want to transition into this chart we have that Dizzy put together, which is great. Before I do that, you mentioned the desert and these location issues, and maybe think of a case probably too long ago for you to have been involved in, the Charles Merritt case in the McStay family in Southern California. Are you familiar with that?
No.
Okay, it was a quadruple murder, a family in the desert, just north of Los Angeles.
What
anyway.
year? Do you remember?
2010. Yeah,
God, I would have
2010.
been around.
You would have been 12 then.
2010? No, I was in the bureau.
But that one doesn't ring a bell, huh? Okay.
It's not.
It was near
I'm
Victorville,
horrible.
in the desert near Victorville.
God, if it was in Victorville, I probably was some.
I remember here a couple of gruesome details, and I remember this because I was on Law and Crime at the time, and I had a couple of, what a shock, props. One was like a big hand sledge, which apparently was the murder weapon. He even killed the little children with it. I mean, it was an outrageous case that plodded its way through the system. He was convicted, but it was a high-profile case from 2010, and that the trial was a few years later. Anyway, I
those were
digress.
cell towers in the desert, so there was an issue about whether or not
that was
they
one
were
of the minor
properly-
issues. Yeah.
Yeah. Properly
Okay,
hid
so
around.
let's look at this. This is kind of a chart that maps all of his locations. I'm not sure how well you can see this. Maybe I can blow it up as we travel.
I can see it.
north.
Okay.
You can see it pretty well. So all the way from Lowe's in the north to somewhere near Brockton, looks like Home Goods in the south, in Norwell. This is basically the information that the defense claims was gained illegally, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're looking at this, and we're coming to this fork in the road that the court has not split yet, you're either going to have this information, and if that's the case, to me, it's a slam dunk, and it's a question of how quickly do they come to their decision if it goes to a jury. However, if this specific info from the phone/iPad does not come in, what else could be used to get this information?
Mm-hmm. You would have, well, that detail would be difficult from cell phone data. You're not going to necessarily get that level of precision from cell phone records themselves. Even with time in advance, it would be difficult to pick off only a Stop and Shop or a CVS or a Lowe's. Instead, you would have, or I would have identified a general area of interest. And just based on the nature of the case, we would have then done a canvas at businesses to see if he shopped there. I would have also done financials to see if he's using his debit card or credit cards to make those purchases. So we might have picked off hotel or businesses.
You
from
might find that the Home Goods or the Lowe's or whatever. Again, check the dates on this. January 1st, the date allegedly, that's when she disappeared, has never been seen since. January 2nd, 3rd, 4th. So the days immediately following. Yeah,
I personally think because he's traveling with a device. I thought it was my understanding. If I'm wrong, then I'm clearly I'm wrong. But it was my understanding that he said he lost his personal phone, but it was later found at the residence, and instead he took one of the children's phones. I think one of the oldest children's phones, and used that as a surrogate device to travel around. So I would have clearly gotten all the phone records for every number on that account. And I would have got the cell site information and time in advance information to identify movement. And because these things aren't, around the corner from his house, we would have definitely seen these trips, especially the trip to his mom's house. I think he took a trip to her mom's house or his mom's house.
And that's where the dumpster, they were able to find the dumpster that hadn't yet been taken to be incinerated. And they were able to find the carpet, the hacksaw with the bone chip on
fragment on it. Yeah.
And then becomes those things that he said he did, you might still have considered, if you thought he had a third device or an unknown device, as you could have done tower dumps or area searches in places that you believe him to have been, to see if you could find another common device. And I would do that most likely just as a preservation of information. So, especially since these things are far enough away that it would be highly improbable that a device would have made these trips to these areas just because. And so that would have been helpful. If you don't find one, then you could kind of rule that out, that there was another unidentified device. So
I do find
Michael, this would be really difficult.
Yeah, that was what I was getting at. And if that's true, then maybe the inevitable discovery rule is not as helpful. But again, the court can make their decision however they want to get there.
Yeah. I think
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Linda.
No, I was going to say, if you think that he is the prime suspect, which you normally do, in a husband, wife that goes missing, wouldn't you want to canvass? You were calling in for backup. You'd want to canvass places like Walmart, Home Goods, Lowe's, because that's where we normally find people buy all the stuff to get rid of a body, so that you wouldn't even care at the phone if they have video at the stores showing them shopping there. I would think. I mean, that's my view, anyhow.
Right. And then I haven't heard anything yet about the vehicle. It seemed like they might have had a fairly nice vehicle. I would look to make sure the vehicle itself doesn't have a SIM card attached to it. And then I would have exploited the telematics SIM vehicle, the vehicle SIM module, which would have acted similar to a mobile device. Right. So I would have looked for that, which, I hope that we're just not seeing that evidence yet, because what's in the spotlight is the suppression of the forensic analysis or forensic extraction. I hope that there's still other evidence that would, support these things. The inevitable discovery becomes difficult for me because this is really precise. And this level of precision is difficult to get absent, Google location type information, which I don't know if they submitted anything to Google to get Google location history or web search history from Google, but that'd be pretty unlikely, with being that it's an iOS operating system.
How realistic is it, within this area? And if you look at this area, I've squeezed in a little bit just for reference. You can see Dedham and Canton, not far away, just to the west. But if you look at how far north this goes, all the way up to, get that opened up there. Hold on. There we go. All the way up to, I can't see, where's that Lowe's? Danvers. How realistic is it if you were just to do a broad, electronic canvas, I'll call it, where you could find out how many Lowe's, how many Home Depots, how many Walmarts there are, and make a request for their surveillance from a limited period of time? How realistic is it to do that?
Yeah, it's not unrealistic. You probably get a lot of pushback as an overly broad search.
Oops, sorry, guys. Sorry. Incoming.
You mean the defense would argue about that? The defense would suggest.
I would, at least in California, it'd be hard for a judge to sign that I just want surveillance video from every Home Depot.
So that being true, then I guess if it were concentric circles, you could probably get to a point where a court would allow it.
Yeah, I think that's where we're maybe speaking the same language now, Michael. Is I would then, having analyzed all the family's phone numbers, I would have at least identified 4 or 5 possible areas or trips that the device took, and then told I would have laid some probable cause, is that we believe that go through the whole process that this information would be consistent with someone making trips to the areas of several home improvement stores. In my training experience, I know individuals use home improvement stores to purchase things to bury people and disguise, go through the whole thing. I think you could get there.
Okay. So, and I think, again, the key would be to make those requests and that search warrant application without using allegedly illegally obtained information. So you would have, the fact she was missing, right? And hadn't been seen. You would have that. You might not have a lot of this very specific location information, though. So what else could you give a court? She's missing. We suspect foul play. What else could you give a court that would allow them to grant that kind of search?
Yeah, I mean, the financials would have been super helpful if I know he paid cash, I think, for one instance. I would have at least got his financials to see that if he made large cash withdrawals, which would also sort of help in terms of some probable cause, is that, he's clearly attempting to make this purchases via cash, not credit card. He's never made large cash withdrawals. Things like that would sort of be just small, but pieces that we would include. I really would focus initially on the vehicle, the telematics, the vehicle SIM module, if it had one. And then the mobile device information, whether that came hopefully from the carriers, is what I would go for. And then identify what you're talking about is, you say circles, but I usually do a search box or target box. And I would identify boxes that I believe the device was present in across time. And then I would use those boxes to collect additional evidence, whether that's, CCTV at shops or businesses, but also traffic cameras, LPRs, license plate readers along the routes.
Traffic cameras. I never
so,
thought about that. Traffic cameras.
Here's
Now,
an interesting possibility too. Look at this from Miss Jessica. If you have apps, store apps, Home Depot, one of them, you walk into the store and you're on the system.
Boom.
It's on your phone. It identifies you. So have you found that in your experience to be a new tool?
Yeah, this comes into the concept of advertising IDs, and those advertising IDs are unique to you. And there's some things that are going on in law enforcement to exploit advertising IDs. It's a little difficult for, I don't want to say us because I'm not part of the us anymore, but a little difficult for law enforcement to take that advertising ID and resolve it back to a specific device. And I was going to give you an example, but I don't know if you guys want one, but I'll give it because it's interesting. Is when I responded to the Vegas shooting and for Paddock, one of the things that we were working with was a company. It was really new at the time, is that they had Bluetooth emitters or Bluetooth collection devices throughout all of Las Vegas. And they were collecting people's MAC address and through Wi-Fi hotspots. They were collecting user information across the Vegas Strip, hotels, and everywhere, and then selling it back to the casinos and businesses to show them what happens with a device when it comes in contact with your casino. How far did they walk into your casino before they left and went somewhere else? And this group reached out to us and offered to give us that information if it was going to be helpful to identify some of Paddock's movement.
Oh, interesting. Interesting.
Yeah, it was really interesting. And so that sort of later evolved into what the government's now doing in terms of advertising IDs. And there's a lot more sort of a conversation on it, but there's more to be done. And I don't know how we got on advertising IDs. Oh, you talked about it, Mike.
There was a question, and so
Paddock was, you could do that.
Just so people know, Paddock, I don't remember the first name, the shooter in the Las Vegas.
Mandalay Bay.
57 people killed, I think, something like that.
And it's interesting that by the way, Maureen Clifford said the ankle bracelet didn't have GPS, but then it could have SMS. But the child, this is interesting, the child's iPad was under the grandmother's name. And the grandmother, she's not being charged with the crime. So it seems to me, if you've illegally taken that, I don't know whether she has if she's not being charged with a crime, any constitutional rights to claim that that's an improper search and seizure.
Yeah, I don't think she would have, I'm not a lawyer, but I don't think she'd have standing, especially if you were to raise a description is that the grandmother bought that device for the child. The child had access to it. The grandma didn't even know the password to get in. Like you could probably go through quite a few things to show that device was not being used.
I guess what we're doing is trying to show that there's a lot of other ways, even if this is a royal screw up here, to get around the royal screw up to get evidence against who I believe is a Frankenmonster. I believe he absolutely killed her. Usually I'm not. And you lose the Google searches. And those are some pretty amazing Google searches, like how long before a body starts to smell right off the bat, January 1st, right? I'm not even going to go through them all, but I don't think you need that if you can get around it through other here's some of them, right? I mean, first of all, how stupid do you have to be to search on
People
Google
really
for these type of things if you have killed your wife? Okay.
Hey, at least he spelled how correctly, got that right.
Yeah. I mean, maybe law enforcement should consider going to Google with some of these phrases and seeing if they could do a keyword search to preserve what device or MACs were assigned into that. So, because some of them some of them are pretty broad, but the luminol to detect blood might be pretty unique, especially if you narrowed your search window to January 1st of 2022.
Body parts in ammonia, that's...
I think there's a few here that I think you would consider sending as a keyword search to Google for that, and especially if you know times.
Murder without a body. I mean, that's it could be anything, right? So you're right, and that's what they didn't do in Karen Reed, right? With the Haas Long, they didn't go to Google and say, within this time period, who searched this? Who searched for this type of phrase? So that's
Yeah,
what
they
we're
should have
talking about.
gone and got her web search history for sure. But
Yeah.
I think we're still seeing an investigative team that is at this point hadn't evolved from their kind of process. And I think I tend to find that people if they get success using a certain process, which is the exploitation of the device, they tend to use it as a crutch and forget to collect all other evidence. And they're like, well, we've just been so successful in the past. We do this, we get what we need. And, this one sort of would support that process because there's so much good content in it that, you sort of learned that, I can get what I need here. Why would I go write a search warrant? I just hope that we're not seeing it all. I hope that they got carrier-based information. If the user was, if Brian Walsh's account was on AT&T, that user information is still there. They should still go get it.
Yeah,
Well, so
and that
this
would
is-
that would give the court more power to dismiss the motion to suppress because that leads to inevitable discovery. All they have to do is go do this other thing. They would have found exactly what they're looking for. I also think, you referenced that like they're kind of in their own, pattern and they're used to doing it. They're also cowboys up there in Norfolk County. They do what they want when they want. The hell with everybody else. And for who knows how long, apparently they've been getting away with it. And so we can only hope that the microscope is much more finely tuned on these yokels, and we weed out. I've been doing all kinds of of cliches. We weed out all the bad apples there, because I'm sure there must be some good ones, but we keep hearing the same names:
Michael,
Proctor, Banning.
totally the same names, and they're going to be gone soon. But I think what we're trying to shine a light here on Justice Served TV is that people, just like, I don't know if you recall, I remember trying my first case where the New Jersey Supreme Court didn't know what a thread was in terms of, they didn't know, had no idea. And of course, judges have now become educated and all. And, I think we're past just the warrant on getting the phone and getting the data off your phone. There's so many other ways to get data and find people. And I think what we're trying to do here, Michael, is educate people, including on this case, that yes, you may have a bad issue here with regard to no warrant and with regard to going far beyond what was agreed to. But there are other ways, other means, and that law enforcement, if they're educated and if we can educate judges and the public that perhaps there are other ways around what is this old-fashioned way of you just have to have a warrant for this specific issue, and if you don't, goodbye, so long, farewell. And that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, and I that's sort of my expertise, right? It is location-based type events and information. And I totally agree with you that there are avenues to obtain location information absent a device. And the reason that's possible is because I've done it my whole career. But think of it this way, is how many people have individuals like me found when we don't know where they are and we don't have their phone, right? And so where do we get the location information if we didn't have the device? And that's from the apps that keep information, third-party apps, as well as the carrier, the phone company themselves, and Google, clearly. So those avenues exist, and they should have been explored. I hope that they were, and hope that they were just not seeing them. But if we did see them, or let me offer this, if they existed, I thought I would have seen that in the opposition motion from prosecution. They would have made highlights that we have other location information that clearly support the information we found. So yes, if you were to argue that it was a violation of the consent order, we already had it in this other avenue that we obtained lawfully. So we still see the same information just from a different source.
Exactly. And that would give the court the evidence it needs to say, doesn't matter, inevitable discovery rule applies.
Unless they don't know it, unless they don't know
Wow.
it, because they're so, and the judge wouldn't know it unless the judge she's training, because there's so
I mean, it's such, that's a very fundamental rule, though. Really, you think they wouldn't know such a
Yeah,
simple rule?
I do. If you
mean,
go,
it's
if
so
you can
simple.
argue before U.S. New Jersey Supreme Court, and they don't even know what a threat is because no one has trained them.
Well, that I get. That's technology.
But
That's,
also
modern technology.
We've seen Guarino in the San Andrew Birchmore not finding searches. We've seen that they can't do this stuff, and maybe it is because they're not putting the money in training people. And this is a good example. And maybe everybody should be listening to Mike Easter, because you have to be trained and you have to know this exists out there if you're going to properly investigate a case, or if you're going to properly defend the case.
Mm-hmm. Well, what's interesting to what you brought up is I remember Trooper Tolley's testimony in the first trial that said he was the guy that did the training. And having read his grand jury testimony and listened to his testimony in the first trial, he is definitely not an expert. And because he's not an expert, he should clearly not be teaching people. If that's their benchmark for what's possible, then Massachusetts State Police is in trouble. He's clear, in my opinion, he's definitely underqualified and dangerously so. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of Trooper Tolley, if you can imagine. I think I would have loved to see a guy like that get demoted or fired. I think if you were able to see all the discovery in Karen Reed's case, he had his fingerprint on everything.
We understand
that guy doesn't deserve to keep. I don't think he deserves to keep his rank, let alone his job. So
and the whole Proctor factor really took eyes off of him, because it was so outrageous.
He got lucky. Yeah, he must send gift cards to Proctor saying thank you. I mean, because
he wouldn't be the first.
Proctor, if it wasn't Proctor, it should have been him. I really hope that the judge finds a way. I imagine there'll be a huge appeal if it does stay in and goes to trial. But
sure,
hopefully it stays in and they can. Maybe they don't go to trial and they get a plea deal, knowing that it might be in the best interest of the longevity of the case. That's difficult.
Thank you, Curious Law Tuber.
Well, that's why we
Justice Served TV memberships appreciated, and you do that so that everyone can hear Mike Easter, because he is training us. We're trying to have him train you. We're trying to have him train the police, and we're trying to have him train the judge, because or else you could have a Frankenmonster going free, and maybe that's what it takes to make some changes in how things are done.
That's what makes this case so bad. The people are how far are we gonna have to go to either convince this region to do their jobs properly? Do you have to let a killer go to make that point? I hope not.
Yeah, I hope so too. I hope that the ankle monitor has SMS. If it did, then they have a really great resource that they need to explore.
Right.
Well, I've told the judge from the beginning, look for this inevitable discovery process. If you're looking to deny the motion to suppress, I think the goods are there, Judge. You might have to work a little bit, but I think there's enough for a colorable argument, and that's all you need.
Hopefully the timeline of when they sort of discovered things and acted upon them don't necessarily negatively affect the inevitability.
Because we want to convict the guilty, and we want to acquit the innocent, or at least not charge them. That's the goal of the justice system. Boy.
That's the problem with this type of culture, is that it has the potential to implicate the wrong people and then let the people that did things get away. And we've seen two examples of it. So.
Well, that's why we bring you in to the mix here, sir. Your perspective is invaluable, and I always learn something. But I'm a dummy, so it's easy for me to learn something. But hopefully, our audience picks up on a few things as well.
Mike, can I ask one last thing? I know you guys were kind of wrapping up a little bit, but I thought maybe to your inevitable discovery, I thought to the benefit of the MSP was that I heard Trooper Guarino state that once he saw the searches, the web search and the analysis, that he stopped and then pursued a search warrant, which is what you would do, because initially you were working under the consent of a missing person, not investigating a crime.
Crime, right.
And now you've uncovered evidence, which you believe evidence of a crime. You have an obligation to stop and then seek a legal search warrant or a search warrant. And they did that. I wonder if the judge could, that was really, I thought, a good faith effort by Trooper Garino to, put a pause to it and then get the search warrant. I think maybe the biggest challenge would be is that they did act on that information that Trooper Garino gave them. So that makes it challenging. It's almost like they needed a dirty team. In hindsight, if he were to have said, I've found something, I can't tell you about it, and I'm going to get a search warrant. So hold on.
Right.
I think if he would have done that, and acted as we used to call it a dirty team, meaning that they get to see things, but they can't tell you about it.
A taint team. It's called a taint team in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
Right.
We did that because somebody, I remember in the Fayed's, the gold bullion guy, his name was Fayed. We executed a search warrant at his business. He is the Goldfinger murder here in Century City years back. Actually, Alan Jackson was on that case, but his whole business, every file had a disclaimer on the file locker that said attorney-client privilege. So we all stopped as soon as we got in, and we reached back to the U.S. Attorney's Office, and they got a different team that wasn't the investigative team to do the search and to identify things that we then could use that, clearly it wasn't all attorney-client privilege. It was just marked that way. But
right.
Interesting enough, I just want, maybe that's hard to think about though in the moment, I'm sure, for Trooper Garino, because he found such good evidence, and I'm sure he wanted to naturally share it. So.
Yeah, interesting, really interesting. Anyhow, look at this. Everyone loves you so much. Hopefully you'll come back when the evidence is released in the Koberger case to further discuss that, and once it becomes open to see what it is that they did.
I hope Michael comes back before that, because that could be sometime with the court's latest ruling that they want to make sure all the appeals are exhausted. And of course, we know Koberger took a plea that said, I won't appeal, but we know there's a Sixth Amendment right granted by the Supreme Court that he still has the right to appeal, primarily for ineffective assistance of counsel. Those things will take years to go through the system if in fact there is a filing. But we'll reach out then for sure. And in the meantime, probably a few more times we'll reach out.
You're going to get sick of us. But we are trying to educate, and you really are a fabulous teacher. Yeah. I can see why the FBI had you teach. You're just amazing. That's why you're everyone's favorite guest. And yes, we've had 643 shows with lots of hundreds of guests. So you're way up there. Right. You and baby Easter.
That's right. I'll always remember our first time, Michael. I was set up on the hood of the truck at that parking lot. It looked like it was at a used car lot just adjacent to the courthouse there in Dedham. And we're like, whoa, this guy is amazing. So we're glad we could hook up and have you back.
I thank you for having me, and thanks for the kind words. I do love teaching. I miss it because I don't get to teach as frequently as I did for the Bureau. So I appreciate you guys giving me the avenue to sort of teach the interwebs.
Yeah, if you want to try out any lessons, we'd be happy to do a dry run with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we consider the next time if there's something that you would like to see or understand as relates to cell phone records.
Yeah,
I could give you an example of what I just testified yesterday in a homicide case. I had Google location information and cell site records, and maybe a demonstrative or a slide like that, just to show. I share it with you, and then we could just put it up for your audience to see. Well, what would a map look like if Mr. Easter was going to use it in a trial?
Yeah.
And what are the opinions that you could come to as to precision based on the different types of evidence? And maybe we'll incorporate that in a case if something comes up, or if there's just general interest in it.
Yeah, that'd be very
that'd
cool.
Be fabulous.
I'm sure there'd be,
cool,
because
right?
people will take that information, even if it's applied generically, and every trial that comes along, they're going to, oh yeah, remember we saw right. And that's how this works. So it makes that viewing all the more educational and entertaining for folks.
Here's our producer. Dizzy says she can set it up so you can share it from your laptop.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. I think. I guess I find it interesting. But if your audience is looking at this type of evidence in a case, and people are challenging that evidence, it might be worth seeing the demonstrative of, well, what would that evidence look like at a trial?
Sure.
I haven't seen it in a trial recently. Nick Balance, if he did a demonstrative and that made it to court, you would have seen it. In fact, I did a case that was big on YouTube back in Maui. God, I can't remember what year that was. It might have been 2017, 2018. It was the Capo Bianco trial. He actually killed his girlfriend and took her out to Haleakala and left her there.
The crater.
Her remains. Parts of her body were recovered, but not all of her was recovered. And I testified in that case, and they challenged the evidence as well. I did a evidence hearing. It was actually the first time Hawaii had admitted cell site evidence as expert testimony.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
That'd be
if anybody were to watch the video, and they're probably like, well, Mike would never talk to the jury. Most of my testimony that you see in YouTube is me talking to the judge, because the judge was the audience for most of my early testimony, because defense wanted to keep it out, and of course we wanted to put it in. So,
well, you know what, we could go back and find that and have you come narrate.
That would be very interesting.
Right, you just send us the link and we'll set it up, because you see everybody in the chat. I mean, I don't have to read them. You can read them yourself. They all want you back. They're all fascinated by this. Who would have thought, right? I remember people always say, "Oh, cell phone tower evidence is deadly." No, it's not. It's the most fascinating thing in the world.
And it is so powerful, and it's getting better all the time.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I mean, I just did a case yesterday. These guys flew in from North Carolina and murdered a young man at his house, and he had like not a ring camera, but something like that, a surveillance camera at his property, and you can see the phone light up. It's at night. You see the guy's phone light up at night, the guy that's committing the murder, right before the victim steps out of the apartment, and you see his phone light up on the camera. And you can see that incoming call in the records. And so it's really nice to marry those things up, is because, you can't see his face because he's wearing a mask and it's dark, but you can see his phone light up, and you see his phone use a tower and an access distance that are right on top of the apartment. And he bought a burner phone specifically for the homicide to lure the victim out.
Fabulous. That's fabulous.
Yeah, that kind of corroborative evidence is crazy strong.
Yeah, what even better is that he was good in, he tried to conceal himself by using a burner phone. And when I say he bought a burner phone, that's actually not the full story. He didn't buy the phone. He actually got a new phone for his subscribed account. He took the old phone, instead of putting it in a drawer, he went and bought a SIM from TrackPhone and put the unsubscribed SIM into his old device, and then started calling the victim. But I can see the device is the same device that was on his original account, and so it's like, oh man, you're an idiot.
What is that acronym? IMEI? Is that right? IMEI?
Yeah, exactly, Mike. He used the same device, which was an iPhone 11, and it had the same serial number, or International Mobile Equipment Identifier.
Yeah.
And think of it like your serial number. It's unique. It can't be replicated. Maybe think of it like the VIN on your car, right?
Right.
It would be like
put a new battery in your car. It's still your car.
I kind of give the example when I teach. It's about as dumb as taking your same car with the same VIN and putting a different license plate on it and think you've disguised yourself.
Yeah. Crazy. Okay, more to come. Those are some very good teases for the next time Michael Easter joins us. Always a pleasure,
we'll get
sir.
through. We'll listen to that August 5th hearing when Tully and Lally testify, and then the following week we can we can play it and have you analyze it. Yeah.
I listened to Lally's testimony.
How'd you like that?
I thought it was it reminded me that what we saw in the Karen Reed case is not simply a result of the MSP, the troopers. It is a collective. Yeah. And you heard him say it, and I never really thought of it, but it really was telling to me when he said, well, we're in the same building. And it was like, well, why didn't you go down the hall and get the 6 search warrants? Right? Or the court orders. Well, why didn't he? They're in the same building. And then I thought of that as it related to the Karen Reed case. And it's like, well, wait a second. It's not like these are 2 separate entities. And in fact, you hear the troopers refer to themselves as assigned to the Norfolk District Attorney's Office. Here in California, we normally think of them as DA investigators. and they're a separate law enforcement branch. They're not the sheriff's department. They're not the police department. And that's sort of how these guys were. They basically work for the DA. And so the fact that they can't share search warrants or not have information is mind blowing to me. And I won't go through the whole Karen Reed case again, but there were things in there that I could tell that the prosecution never got from detectives, because I could see what they wrote a search warrant for, but I could see there was no returns for them in the discovery.
Wow.
Yikes.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
Wow,
you know,
yikes,
some
right.
say it's lazy, some say it's arrogant, some say it's incompetence, maybe it's a combination of all, but it's just not the way law enforcement is supposed to act. So
No.
Yeah.
All right, sir. We'll have a great next trial or two between now and when we see you next time.
Oh yeah, we'll try to get you on the week of what would be the week of the 10th. Then we'll try to see what we can do.
Yeah.
If you're free.
Okay.
Okay, buddy.
Thanks,
Take care.
everyone.
Thanks,
Bye.
Easter.
Bye-bye. Man,
I learned
my
so
brain
much.
is exploding.
I know. I learned so much. I mean, also, I learned. I thought that I dropped it about 6 times here because I was so excited. I thought that this was my little spy, but it turns around. There's spies everywhere we go.
See, that's why, you know, from a law enforcement perspective, it's like, great, these are great tools. From just a normal human wandering around, it's kind of scary. You know, all the things that know where you are when you're there.
How long
For the
you're
law-abiding
there.
citizen, it's scary.
Yeah, but that's why it's interesting to me that, you know, you still have a 50 or 60% or 40% not solved rate for murders in the United States.
Yeah.
The way everyone has this around them. I mean, unless you're the old Unabomber, you know, you've got something. You've got something. You know, so. But he's amazing. He's an amazing teacher.
He's just a good guy too. You just tell he's just a good guy.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
and
Great
that goes
teacher.
a long way with me.
Yeah.
Just be a good guy.
Yeah.
Okay, so tomorrow I'm throwing out this impromptu "Where in the World is Justice." That's all I'm going to tell you right now. Tomorrow I'll pop up somewhere and through the course of our show, and I think we still have Aunt Debbie's coming.
And Deb's coming tomorrow night.
Okay.
First appearance. Should be kind of fun.
So in the course of all of that, I'll
guess-
dribble out some facts about a crime that is from the location I will be at, and then we'll give away, you know, 1 or 2, maybe even 2, first 2 people. So the mods, get ready.
And I won't give it up this time. Last time I'm going to stay out of it. Last time you said we're going to give away 2, and I'm like, oh, well, here we are.
I know. Well, I got a bunch of them stacked up.
And then we
So-
already have next week almost pretty much planned. On Monday, yeah, Missy, Monday we are doing Monday. Okay, come on, everybody, help me here.
I don't know. You were talking about something earlier. I can't remember. It's only Wednesday. I got
No,
Friday's going to be a
we
big
have-
day, so
we have
I'm
3
still
shows.
focusing.
We have 3 shows already planned for next week, and I think the 4th one already just got. That's we are, Missy. We're going to Joe Giacalone and Michael Del Signore is going to come and talk about this case, right? We're going to talk about this case. Isn't that right, Missy? Right? Oh, hello.
Just Domino just woke up, you know, because
Right.
listening
And-
to us puts him right to sleep.
Yeah, and on Wednesday of next week, we're going to do Koberger, I think, if I recall, right?
And then, of course, at the end of the week, we'll have another Fridelson.
Pridelson. On Thursday, we just set that up this morning. Missy, what did we just set up? We just set it up today, our Thursday, and I think we're also going to probably have, well, Thursday, we're hoping to have a Gillen Maxwell and Epstein show next Thursday. We'll see where we are. And Tuesday, we already just set something up. Anyhow, I can't remember. We have so many shows already set up.
I can't think past a couple of days. It's too much for me. So
uh,
Friday's going to be crazy because we have the hearing up and Sean
Reyes.
Yeah, Sean Paul Reyes.
Right.
And I'm working with the camera gear, trying to get that all sorted out because JSTV will be the pool camera.
That's right. We haven't decided whether we're going to just hand the card out or stream it, right?
I don't know about streaming it. I'm still investigating it. It's a more technological challenge, and the last thing I want to do is screw that up and not at least have the event recorded. So we're working on it. At the very least, we're going to capture it. We're going to record it. I got the final instructions from the court. So that's we're good on that. So that'll
And
be.
you're gonna be running that when you get out of the courthouse anyhow. And then we have our Fridelson with
Yes.
Katie.
Megan.
Yeah,
Katie Megan.
it's at 6 o'clock on Friday. And then, as I said, I think we have at least 4 shows planned already for next week. Maybe the 5th one is already planned. So that takes us into the following week.
Dizzy's encouraging. We can do it. We can
do it. We can
All
do
right.
it.
We'll talk.
All right, everybody. So mark your calendars. Justice Served TV, 6 p.m. All week.
All righty. Until the next time, from wherever I am, I'm Michael Bryant. Try to do the right thing.
And I'm Linda Kenney Baden. But before you go, we need you to really smash that subscribe button. I'm going to give you time to do it, okay? Because I always say it, you don't do it, you leave, you get off, and the like button. And if you hit the like button, by the way, with the thumbnails that are set up beforehand, it actually pushes us out further. So I saw people were doing that today. But you can hit the like button now, too. That's good. This share, and that'll share the show. And then the notify all, and you'll get notified when we're on air, including when Michael does his Where in the World is Justice, or if he comes on earlier on Friday after the Reyes hearing.
Yeah, we're going to play that by ear and see what we need to do.
And he'll put it on. So hit that. But more importantly, we're almost at 25,000 subscriptions. Hope to get there by the end of the week, maybe before that. So please just smash it right now if you have another 700. If all of our viewers who watch our shows, the million of you who've been watching our shows, had smashed that subscribe button, we'd be like the top tubers, the top law tubers that existed. So a lot of time is spent. A lot of people donate their time. The mods donate their time. The guests donate their time. Show them some love. Hit the subscribe for Justice.
There you go. That is the longest wrap up I've ever heard you do.
Sorry.
Look, Domino's dying to get out. Domino's like, I've had enough. Okay.